I'd like to welcome Abdul Khan and the Projections, who are joining me in the studio now. And with us, we have Abdul, the lead vocalist, Kevin Roach on guitar, Norman Knight on bass guitar, Robert Coleman on percussion, and we've got Andrew Hodson on the ukulele. He's going to tell us, hello, you're going to tell us more about that in a moment. But first, let's ask Abdul how you all got together, first of all.
I met Andy after reading an article in Trafford News, and I told Andy that I have written some songs which I want to make into an album. So Andy said, bring them around, and that's how we got together. Andy works for Seed Studio in Old Trafford.
Right.
And he's working on the music for my songs.
Right, okay. Now, Asian music, it's quite different to Western music, we know that.
Yeah.
The notation system is quite different. How do you then marry the two? When you approached Kevin and the rest of the group, were they like a bit, well, how are we going to get this together? How are we going to gel?
It is a bit difficult. I have to bend few rules, and they have to bend few rules, and then that's the only way we can manage this. I made the tune, and Andy has written the music, and Kevin and Norman and Rob are instructed by Andy.
Right, okay. Well, let's get a flavour. We've heard our first item, Tera Misal Hai. What are you going to perform now?
The song I'm going to sing now is Man Ki Baat Bataun. It's a love song.
And what does that mean?
Man Ki Baat Bataun. It is a boy telling the girl that I know what's in your heart and what you are looking for.
Bit of a mind reader then, eh?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is. Right.
Okay, so do you want to start? Let's go.
मन की बात बताऊं गोरी मन की बात बताऊं
Well done. Fantastic. And you're listening to Indus, Abdul Khan and the Projections on BBC Radio Manchester and BBC Radio Lancashire. Well, let's bring in Kevin, if you can sort of squeeze along over here and have a chat with you. Do you want to come over and share the mic with Abdul there? How did you then get involved in all this then?
Well, I first got involved because Abdul and I have a mutual friend. And he said, could I go round and have a look at Abdul's sound card at his computer? So I did. I saw Abdul's keyboard and asked him if he'd play a few songs for me, and I was hooked.
And you thought, this is fantastic,
That
a nice melodic ghazal style. And ghazal, for those who don't know, it's a light classical form of music, isn't it, Abdul?
Yes, it is.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
It is.
The ghazal form of music.
Ghazal is a sort of love poem, and it's a different style to Geet, what they call Geet in India and Pakistan. And there are very few singers who sing ghazals. Not everybody who can sing ghazals, according to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's a refined art, isn't it? It's not something that anyone can just come across.
No.
Well, let's squeeze in some of the other artists that we have with us. And Norman's on bass guitar. Do you want to come down? Hello, how are you?
Yes,
you're right.
fine.
So what do you make of all this? When you were approached by the others, and they said, well, come and join our band, and you thought, well, how are we going to fit in the bass guitar?
Well, I was very glad to do it because I'd heard Abdul perform a couple of times before I'd played with him. and at first I did find it very difficult to kind of play the songs, you know, differences with timings and structures and that you have. But it only took a couple of rehearsals, you know, and we kind of found a sound of our own, really, you know.
Because it's all about understanding rhythm, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's quite rhythmical. I mean, there's elements in, you know, obviously there's elements in Asian music that we're not using, but the sound that Andy and Kevin had, you know, straight away I kind of thought I know what to play with that, you know, and it just fitted with what Abdul was singing, really.
Well, let's. And interestingly, you've also got the ukulele, which Andrew Hodson's performing on. Andrew, it's interesting. Tell us first of all about the ukulele, for those who don't know.
Well, the ukulele, I think it was a Hawaiian or an American kind of instrument, and it's a small guitar with 4 strings, and not tuned like the guitar. So it's a bit like a mandolin, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, actually, in Indian classical music, we have a mandolin maestro, U. Srinivas from South India. Absolute fantastic player and very innovative with the with his instrument. And also, we've interviewed a slide guitarist before. Who's used, I think, the ukulele in his Debashish Bhattacharya. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Right.
Who's also reinvented some of these slide guitars and makes tunes out of it that are quite similar to the sitar, the Indian classical instrument.
Yeah.
So was it hard to sort of gel in your particular instrument with the rest of the band as well?
Well, I'm quite interested in African music as well, and I mean, I've built my own pickup for this ukulele, and then I put it through a phase and echo pedal, and the guitar's also through phase and kind of flanger pedals, and it kind of does give a kind of deserty kind of feel against Abdul's voice, really, and the bass. So it's a mixture of kind of bands like Spiritualized and, you know, kind of indie rock bands of the 90s, and it mixed in with Indian kind of classical music, and we've also Rob's instrument as well.
Yeah, well, we're going to come on to Rob's instrument, and it's interesting you were talking about the early bands, because our producer, Racy, mentioned it reminds him of a band called Shakti. So it has very similar... Do you know Shakti at all, Abdul? No, you haven't heard of them, right?
Well, you can check these, you know, with the internet as well, you can check this kind of music out very quickly, so we'll have to check them out on Spotify. So
you mentioned Seed Studios. What's that all about, then?
Well, I work for a company called Blue Sky, which is... for social and cultural inclusion. It's in Old Trafford, and I run a music service, an art service in the basement of the building, and that's called Seed Studios, and that's got a 16-track recording studio, practice room, a DJ room, and we kind of work on people's aspirations. So people come to the studio and sort of say, I want to do this or I want to do that. And Abdul was one of those people. He lives in Trafford, and he came along and said, I've written all these songs, is there any chance... Yeah, and he wrote them 30 years ago, and he sort of said, is there any chance I can do these songs live? And
they're on air after 30 years. That's saying something, Abdul.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring in Rob, because you're on percussion.
Yeah.
Some interesting pieces of instrument you have there. Tell us about that.
Well, this is an African jug drum. It's made out of clay. I got it from the internet, at great expense to myself. This is just a basic... crash cymbal, and that really is about it.
Now, that's in place of the Indian classical instrument, which is the tabla, which goes hand in hand with ghazal singing. So, do you dabble with the tablas at all? Or?
No, in fact, if anything, I've been quite a disruptive influence on the band.
That's what making great music is all about, being disruptive.
Well, I've tried to steer the band in the direction of punk, but they haven't really embraced that. We've all got different tastes, and somehow it just works really well.
Right, okay, well, we hear another tune with you, from you in a moment. And joining us in the studio, we have Abdul, Kevin, Norman, Robert and Andrew, and they're better known as Abdul Khan and the Projections. Now, you play quite extensively across the Northwest. Tell us about some of the gigs.
Well, some of the gigs that we've done, as well as community centres in partnership with Trafford Council. We've played at the Royal Northern College of Music a couple of times. Played at the Contact Theatre, even at the Crowbar 2 down the road from here.
Right, okay, and any future events that we should be watching out for?
Well, we've got a big one coming up at the end of February next year in Newcastle in the North East. Somebody saw our MySpace site, which is www.myspace.com/Abdul Khan and Projections. And he saw somebody playing the ukulele, and it's a ukulele festival we're playing at. And he said, "Oh, we want these people." And they asked us, and we're glad to.
Okay, lovely. Fantastic. Live music here on Indus on BBC Radio Manchester and BBC Radio Lancashire. Abdul, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story. And long may your music continue. That was Kevin Roach on guitar, Norman Knight on bass guitar, Robert Coleman on percussion, and Andrew Hodson on the ukulele. So thank you very much for joining us. You're most welcome. And hopefully we'll speak to you guys very soon.